So, link click. As Link Click's third season, the Yingdu arc is nearing its airing date, I think it is time for me to actually make a video on a theory I stalked up for so long but was not motivated to do so. Quick spoiler alert. If you haven't watched Link Click's Season 1 and 2, none of this will make any sense to you, so please, go watch it now. Go. Then, come back to watch this, and I promise everything will come together. This all started after Episode 5 of Link Click Season 2 aired. The domestic violence, though fictional, did manage to reach a part of me emotionally and certainly evoked some personal feelings for that situation. However, seeing past that emotional part was the answer to a question I had back in my mind since Season 1. How did Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi get their powers? Only when I witnessed Li Tiancheng and Li Tianxi's powers and how they were awakened did the power awakening theory start to form. The second PV and now the opening songs video for Yingdu Arc solidified my theory's validity. This is why I am confident enough to make this theory into a video. I believe that I have solved how the powers were triggered and formed. This power awakening theory consists of 3 parts: how the powers are triggered, why the powers are different with different characters, and how the powers' traits hold a seemingly deeper connection to the characters who have them. I believe the powers in Link Click are triggered by trauma and the heightened emotions it brings to the characters who manifested them. The powers are tailored specifically for the characters because of the differences in coping mechanisms and trauma, and the traits of their powers are indicators of the underlying basic thought process stemming from said traumatic event or events. First, let's list the cast of power users and break down their powers. We have a total of 4 known characters with powers: Cheng Xiaoshi, Lu Guang, Li Tiancheng, and Li Tianxi. All of them have vastly different powers. I divided their powers into activation, direction, position, and mobility. Activation means how the ability is activated. Direction implies the direction of time in which the powers bring the character. Position means the character's perspective and position when using the power. Mobility means whether the power would be able to change certain events from unfolding. Let's start with Cheng Xiaoshi. Cheng Xiaoshi activates and deactivates his ability by clapping his hands together. That in itself may infer to a particular meaning of him having hold of the past and present and connecting himself to both ends by clapping his hands together, but that is a theory for another day. His powers bring him back to when the photo was taken, so the general direction is the past. His power allows him to possess the position of the photographer, the person who took the picture at that time, and he can take charge of the actions actively the photographer does after the photo was taken. Lu Guang's power activates when he looks at the photo. He said in Season 1 that he can only peer into the events happening within the first 12 hours after the photo was taken, but we all know he hides a lot of information about himself and how his abilities work. Setting that aside, the general direction of which his power brings is more of the future, as he is looking into what happened after the photo was taken, which the photographer and people in the photo wouldn't know about until they experienced it. He doesn't take any particular perspective or perception in the photo, but as a passive witness who couldn't physically change the situation's outcome by himself with his powers. Li Tiancheng's power can be activated upon physical contact with his target. His powers are effective as long as he remains physically in touch with the target. This also means he can only control the target in their present state, pinning the general direction of his powers in the present. He can possess the body of his target after getting into physical contact, and can change the target's actions. We know that, when paired with Li Tianxi's ability, he can create a remote connection to the person in the photo, but in their present state. Rather than controlling the person in the picture at the moment at which it was taken, like Cheng Xiaoshi, he would be controlling the person in the picture as of now. Li Tianxi's power can be activated upon looking at the photo. The explanations and what was shown in Season 2 was very vague, but I believe she can see the person's memories in the picture and form an emotional connection with them. I would place Li Tianxi's power more of the past than the present. Li Tianxi can't possess and control bodies, but I believe her empathetic channel allowed Li Tiancheng to control the bodies of people captured in the photos remotely. Now that we have sorted out their powers, allow me to explain my theory with the premise of these characters. Now, what happened to Cheng Xiaoshi when he was a kid? His parents left him and went missing. As a kid, there were probably two parts in his mind that stayed with him into adulthood. One part would be wanting to find his parents, which is a general premise of what the Yingdu arc is about, according to the PVs. Cheng Xiaoshi found some evidence regarding his father and wanted to go to Yingdu because of his search for his missing parents. The other part would be regretting his inability to stop his parents from leaving him if he knew they would go missing, and wishing that he could just remain in the times of childhood when his parents were with him. These two parts played a key role in the power formed: the strong will to find his parents and the childish wish to stay with the innocent and happy past. The strong will to find his parents triggered his power, and his desire to remain in the innocent past allowed him to gain the ability to enter and change the past. Now, you probably would be wondering, why would he take the position of the photographer and not the photographed? The photographer's power is to control the narrative and what segment of memories they want to document and keep, while also being in an active role in a passive situation. As a kid, Cheng Xiaoshi would have quickly figured that he could not search for his parents, as he was a child with no one supporting him. He had no control over his situation, so having an active and controlling role gave him that security he desperately needed when he was a child. He would have also thought of scenarios as a coping mechanism for his lack of control and desire for power, such as, if I was bigger, stronger, and older, maybe I can find my parents, which can quickly escalate to, if I wasn't my current self, I might be able to find my parents by now. This is why he can possess the bodies of the photographers, as becoming someone else gives him the belief that he might be able to find his parents through someone else. This power wasn't present when he was a child because of Qiaoling's existence. Qiaoling became his emotional support over the years, which may be why his powers were not triggered and awakened early on. Now, where does Lu Guang fit in this particular theory? Lu Guang's past is so vague, no one actually knows what happened, but the only information we got after Season 2's ending was revealed, and the recent Season 3's opening video was that Lu Guang went through cycles after cycles of going back in time to save Cheng Xiaoshi from dying. And you are telling me this series is not gay? The triggered awakening of his ability may be related to his past, when he lost someone the same way he lost Cheng Xiaoshi, or perhaps an inevitable betrayal he didn't foresee. Either way, I firmly believe the insecurity stems from the fear of the unknown future that becomes the core of his powers. To change something in the past, you must know what happened after that segment. To change the unfortunate present, you must know what happened to the past that led to that present. This is why Lu Guang possesses the ability to see through photos. It is to understand the series of events that led to the present. But why did Lu Guang not hold the ability to possess someone else? That is definitely related to Lu Guang's coping mechanism when it comes to his trauma. He blames Chen Xiaoshi's death on himself to the point that he willingly sacrificed his own life for him, something he did time after time during Season 2 and what was revealed at the end of Season 2. His self-blaming tendency grounded him in this situation, which means his power can't possess another's body. I also have to offer an explanation for why Lu Guang doesn't have any powers to change the events that happened after the photo was taken. Lu Guang's trauma concerning Chen Xiaoshi's death is definitely related to one of the new characters introduced in the Yingdu arc, Vane. And one of Vane's lines is associated with some form of punishment for changing the events after the photo was taken. Lu Guang fears changing the past, but only wants to try changing it due to Chen Xiaoshi's death. Now, Vane's message doesn't necessarily create that fear in Lu Guang, but rather as a reminder for Lu Guang of his fear of change. However, that fear of change certainly solidifies his inability to change the past through the photos. Now let's talk about Li Tianxi. Li Tianxi was a girl who couldn't speak due to the trauma and the fear of the family that she loved being split apart. She deeply regretted her inability to understand her mother and brother and also the unstable family situation they were going through, but her avoidant coping mechanism kept stopping her from actually understanding the situation. The domestic violence hidden behind the doors probably solidified her fear and confusion as to why her father and mother were fighting. In what ways can a child understand what other people were thinking? She would have imagined herself having a mental connection with her parents, understanding and listening to them and their emotions, hoping to find an answer in their memories. Her power is limited to photos because photographs were the only items left that reminded her of her mother and brother. Li Tiancheng is the only character known to have a certain power but not restricted to photos. The physical act of contact seems similar to the tragic upbringing and domestic violence he had to face when he was a kid. Li Tiancheng is very much fixated on the aspect of control, dominance, and power due to his insecurities when he was a child, of his lack of power to protect his mother and younger sister, which is why he latched onto the idea of becoming a hunter so willingly. What he craved wasn't just power, it was protection and security for himself and his sister. At the end of Season 2, Li Tianxi's death made the protection aspect for his sister disappear. Still, the desire for power and security for himself remains, making him develop into the true hunter he wanted to be. Now, the link between Li Tiancheng and Li Tianxi's abilities also makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Li Tianxi's way of coping is to avoid the issue, plot-wise or subconsciously. She was being pushed into the bedroom with her brother when domestic violence occurred, and she silenced herself after hearing that her mother and father were fighting. She believed that as long as she didn't do anything that could worsen the situation, the conflict would stop and everything would be normal. This is why her eyes were always closed when linked with Li Tiancheng's power. It could be interpreted as a physical form of avoidance of the outside world. Li Tiancheng, however, doesn't have that luxury. His eyes are open when using his abilities because, as a hunter, he must be constantly aware of his surroundings and stay alert for potential threats that can harm himself and his sister. As his power is about possession and control, but nothing about empathetic connections, anyone who was under his control loses that part of the memory. It is very different to what Chen Xiaoshi has displayed in Season 1, as Chen Xiaoshi doesn't only possess the body of the photographer at the time of the taken photo, he also feels the emotions. He sees the memories of the people he possessed. This is why the client may remember Chen Xiaoshi's actions, but Li Tiancheng's targets lose that section of memory when Li Tiancheng is in control. In conclusion, Chen Xiaoshi can't let go of the past, which made him possess the power to change the past. Lu Guang can't let go of the future because he came from a future he wanted to avoid, which made him gain the power to foresee the future so he can find ways to avoid it. Li Tianxi can't understand others, which made her gain the ability to see memories and feel emotions of others. Li Tiancheng can't let go of the present, which made him manifest the ability to change the present. What a wonderful traumatic mess. I love you, Link Click. Thank you for feeding me glass shards to give me eternal pain. And that concludes my Link Click power awakening theory. That one must experience trauma to trigger the formation of a power, and the power corresponds directly to the character's trauma and underlying base of coping. But really, it's just a theory. A Link Click theory. I need to go and rest. Okay, thank you so much for anyone who has watched this video until the very end. I really appreciate your support, and I know it is really hard to get through a 15-minute long video of a person speaking in English about a Chinese donghua on a Chinese platform. I am, in fact, Chinese, but I feel like the Chinese skills that I possess isn't enough to make this video clear, so this is why I had to switch into the other language that I have learnt ever since I was a child, to make things work, I suppose. Thank you so much once again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one whenever I make it.